All right, Rivermen Day is rolling on today. We've already talked to a couple of great names from all sorts of eras, and now we're going to bring in an SPHL era person and a broadcaster. He's going to be the only one that's a broadcaster on tap, unless you count Mike McKenna, who we had earlier today. He's an analyst out in Vegas. But we're bringing in Alan Fuehring, the current voice for the American Hockey League's Bridgeport Sound Tigers, and he's a former voice of the Peoria Rivermen. Alan, thanks so much for taking the time. How are you?
I'm good, Andrew. Thanks for having me. This is going to be a lot of fun.
I think so, and I appreciate you staying up a little. I mean, it's not too late. It's a little past 8. We're both on the East Coast right now, but you just got done earlier today calling a game. Sound Tigers getting a big win over the Hartford Wolfpack, and I got to ask you, obviously great for a team to get a win, but how have things been in this COVID world of hockey where we're not in bubbles, but at the same time there are so many restrictions that you probably feel like you are in a bubble?
Yeah, it's a very interesting year, certainly unique. I mean, this is the first time I've ever worked with a team that I haven't been in direct contact with the players and coaches. I stay far away from the locker room. It's the only year I've been a pro broadcaster that I haven't gone on the road with the team. Things are very different. The players, have to come in at a certain time to get tested. They can only be in the locker room for a certain amount of time, and obviously they have to wear masks and everything while they're there. But I mean, I'm talking to them, virtually, just like this conversation over Zoom, and I'm doing all my notes over Zoom and with phone calls and all of that. So for me, it's completely different, and I know for everybody else, it's the same. We still don't have fans at home games. That's weird. Mm-hmm. Had a game today, as you mentioned, very quiet, even though it was a 5-3 game. So this year just keeps throwing challenges out at everyone. And, fortunately, for me and, my family, and this is fun. I mean, I get to watch and call hockey games for a living. My life's not very difficult, but there's so many people out there who are still having a tough time. And, hopefully hockey's, just like any sport is a way for people to get away from that. So it doesn't really matter how weird and different it is for us, although it is very unique because it's just something very small in the grand scheme of things.
I know one of the unique elements is you and I right now, we're talking from these like makeshift studios that we're doing this. In my case, I'm doing Zoom broadcasts. That is not very hard. I don't know if you're in the same room that I've seen you take pictures of, that you're calling games on the road. Correct me if I'm wrong. You mentioned you're not traveling with the team. You're calling games, I think, from your house.
Yeah, I'm in the exact same room, Andrew. I'm in my home here in Stratford, Connecticut. It's just up the road, up I-95 from Bridgeport, where we play our home games. But yeah, I mean, I'm watching the exact same screen and the same feed that fans at home are watching on AHL TV. Nothing different. I don't have any different camera angles. I'm seeing the same kind of pixelated camera angle. And even, in Providence, or actually they relocated to Marlborough, Massachusetts, but in our first season opener, first game of the year, they had a very unique setup, and one where they kept changing the camera angles. So, you'd call the game with that center ice camera, but as soon as the puck would go behind the net, they would switch the camera entirely to something that is kind of looking straight down the ice from behind the net. It's very weird to get used to. Obviously it's not NBC broadcasting the game. It's not MSG Networks. It's not, Comcast Sports Chicago or whatever it is. I mean, it's just a practice rink with a couple of cameras set up in Marlborough, Massachusetts. So the angles aren't great. They're kind of fuzzy. It's very tough. It was one of the most challenging things I've ever done. And, hopefully we'll get better at it, because we got a lot of road games this year. Well, I shouldn't say that. We have 24 games total, 12 home, 12 away. So not as many as we usually have, but it seems like still quite a bit.
Yeah, they're challenging you there. Part of me as a broadcaster of a team that's opted out, of course, I envy guys like yourself that are getting to call games, but knowing what some of those video feeds are like and seeing them at the ECHL and the SPHL, they're not much better, if better at all. So I don't envy that aspect. You mentioned, as we talked about in the open, you're the broadcaster for Bridgeport, the AHL affiliate for the Islanders. You've called Connecticut home for a number of years now, but ultimately, we go all the way back to your time in Peoria, which feels like a long time ago now. It's 7-8 years since you left town to move up initially. But I have a feeling, everybody along the way, they have their stops, and those places mean something to them because it's all part of the journey. But I think for you, maybe being in Peoria hit a little bit more home because you're a local boy there and a Bradley grad.
Yeah, that was my hometown team growing up. I was born in Peoria. I grew up in Morton, Illinois. All my family's still in the area. I still come back every year in the summer and for Christmas too. That was the team I grew up, going to, at games that my grandpa took my brothers and I. My uncle is a coach and former NHL head coach, and every time he was in town, he would want to go to a Rivermen game. So we would all, get excited and get in the car and head over. I mean, that's the team that I consistently went to games at. Throw a couple of Blackhawks games in there, throw a couple of St. Louis Blues games in there. But for the most part, my relationship with hockey was all, through the Rivermen. It all stemmed through that. So, for me, that was my team. And then when I went to college at Bradley University, I ended up getting an internship my sophomore year with Brenden Burke, another former Rivermen voice who's now the TV voice of the New York Islanders. And, he brought me on my sophomore year. And that's when it, went from something that was just fun and something I used to go to as a kid to like, okay, now this might be the team that gets me started on my career path. And that's ultimately what it became. Went back my junior year of Bradley at Bradley to be another kind of a different role, but a similar position for an internship. And then my senior year, I had a little bit more responsibility on my plate and came back for my third year as an intern with the Rivermen. And that's when they were in the American Hockey League. Fell in love with, again, like just everything behind the scenes from a business side and from a career standpoint. And that's when I kind of decided, okay, I want to be a play-by-play broadcaster and mainly in hockey. And I went to Charlotte, North Carolina for a year right after I graduated. I worked in NASCAR for a year. And then, the transition happened. The team went from the AHL to the SPHL. Brenden Burke moved on to Utica. That job was open. And now, my boss at the time is now your boss, Bart Rogers. He brought me on. And all of a sudden, I went from this kid who attended Rivermen games and, paid to go to now getting paid to go to games and call them, and it all worked out. And so, yeah, to answer your question, I mean, that team is very special to me. It always will be. And it's the team that really got me started in the career that I'm in now.
There's a lot of layers we're going to unpack too from your time as an intern and moving into the SPHL. But before we go there, two things. One, a shout out to you, Alan, because I don't know how many guests, that we're recording these in advance, how many guests still are grabbing whatever Peoria merch they have out of the closet and throwing it on. But
yeah, there you go.
The fans can make it out. Yeah, half the paddle wheels visible. You're wearing that. That was the logo when they came into the SP, right?
Yeah, we were talking just before we got started. This is the 2013-14 logo. So, the inaugural season in the SPHL was the one season that I was there for full time. And I think it's pretty similar. I know you got the same, the new logo, but it's pretty similar. The wheel doesn't go all the way around, but it's still close.
Yeah, they were, I believe the slogan, correct me if I'm wrong, because, every team has to have one, was where history and tradition meet again.
Yep.
I think
that's it. Look at you.
Hey, man, try to study.
Very, very well done.
On Saturday, October 26th, the Rivermen kick off a new season against the Bloomington Thunder. It's Bruce Sauer's Hockey Night in Peoria, and the first 5,000 fans receive a magnet schedule courtesy of Heritage Bank. All Upper Bowl tickets have been rolled back to just $8 each, and after the game, the players will give 20 lucky fans the jerseys right off their backs. And as always, the entire team will be available after the game for autographs. Rivermen Hockey, where history and tradition meet again.
People talk about the crowds and the atmosphere and what it was like in there. Like, it was a party and then there was a hockey game. Do you remember as a kid, was it like that?
Yeah. Oh yeah. It was rowdy. It was something that, you just felt energy even before the opening face-off. Warm-ups had a different energy to them. A very rowdy blue collar group of folks. And, that's still a lot of what it is. And that's a lot of what makes it fun. But yeah, there was just, a different vibe there leading into the opening face-off. And that's still and I know, the SPHL still, is very rough and there's a lot of fighting and all of that. But it was even up to notch back then. And, that's something that really I don't think will go away from the tradition of Rivermen hockey in that style of play, and the fans feed off of that. And as a kid, I was always up on my feet screaming, jumping up and down whenever someone dropped the gloves. And I think that ultimately has a big impact on a lot of the reason why fans still come out. And and that's what they want to see when they come to a game.
Yeah, it's entertainment, and you can't deny it no matter what. No matter what side of the argument you fall on with fighting and its place in hockey now in the modern era, it still gets people to their feet.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I love the Rivermen. I love Peoria. Just such a, fun blue collar atmosphere. And, I hope that never changes.
It's got to be surreal too at the time. I mean, obviously I think the summit of it is you becoming the guy for when they go into the SPHL and you're named the first broadcaster. But prior to that, you interned there for a number of years. You mentioned interning under Brenden Burke, and, Alan, given your history of the Rivermen and your knowledge of the team, there's a ton of broadcasters you could look back at too. I mean, Matt McConnell, Tom Callahan, they come to mind. But I think as an outsider, as an East Coast kid coming to the Midwest, coming to that market, Norm Ulrich is the godsend there. And he's kind of the be all end all of Rivermen broadcasters. But I think, honestly, I don't know if you could argue Brenden Burke probably falls right underneath that. I mean, what was it like working with him?
Yeah, I mean, people always ask me if they thought Brenden could reach the NHL, and I always said he's going to reach the NHL. He's going to be one of the top voices of the NHL when he gets there, and I think that's kind of played out accurately right now. He's getting Stanley Cup playoffs games for NBC, getting a lot of NBC games. With Doc Emmerich retiring, he's already up in the top 3 of NHL voices for NBC right now here in the United States. I mean, he makes it look so easy and sound like it's so easy to do. And I promise you, and this too as a fellow broadcaster, it is not easy. No. You can get the players down, you can get, different adjectives down, you can really have everything of what it takes. And then, the quote unquote lights turn on and the game happens, the puck drops, and you got to sort it out in your head. And you got to make sure that your timing's good. You got to make sure you're speaking clearly. A lot of it is, having the voice as well. You got to have a good voice. And, he's got the full package. And I learned so much from him, just, really just taking in everything that he does, and not necessarily asking him questions or getting direct advice, but just kind of sitting back. And for 3 years, really, I was in the chair right next to him in the press box. And I was like a sponge. I soaked it all in. And, I'm not even close to as good as he is. And, that's after spending 3 years and following him ever since he went to Utica and then to the Islanders. And now, we're in the same organization right now. Our parent club is the Islanders. So, and by the way, I had the job here a week before he got hired by the Isles. So it's not like he got me hired.
Yeah.
It actually might be vice versa. I don't know.
There you go. That's you were able to pull some intern connections.
Yeah, I was here first. So, I got to point that out. But, he's just, like I said, he's just so good. He makes it look so easy, make it sound so easy. He used to play hockey. He's got the background of, how the game works from a player's perspective as well as a broadcaster's perspective. He's very smart. You hear about hockey IQ all the time. He's got the hockey IQ to understand, what a coach is seeing in a given moment and what the referees are seeing and what players are seeing. Yeah. And ultimately then he can talk about it as a broadcaster. And I never played hockey, so he's got the leg up there. And I think he's definitely going to be maybe not number 1, but maybe top 2. He's already in the top 3 of, hockey voices here in the States.
Yeah, this before turning 42, which is pretty impressive. Yeah. It's funny, too, because he got that job in 2016 with the Islanders, but you can go back and, I mean, they're not the easiest thing to find, but there are still those YouTube highlights from the AHL Rivermen days, and you can look, I mean, I was listening to, I can't remember if it was, I guess at the time the team would have been called the Lake Erie Monsters, maybe a rare occasion where the Monsters and Rivermen would have played, maybe one off a year, but I remember like finding the highlights of that in 2010. I'm like, how did this guy not get plucked then? And he waited another 6 years until he got there. I mean, he was NHL ready years before I think he got to the booth.
Yeah. He paid his dues. He was there. He, got passed over several times, by other clubs. And, it worked out for him with the New York Islanders. And that's one of those things that, it just seems to always work out. For him, he got passed over a couple times, as I mentioned, but, he's from this part of the country here in the Northeast. He's from New Jersey. His wife's from New York. I mean, this was really the the job that he wanted the most. And certainly, you know, if the Florida Panthers or somebody else would have hired him, he would have taken that job. And then you look at what he would have missed out on. But, you know, a TV job in the #1 market in the country and kind of, you know, again, the place where he's from, you're in the Northeast. I mean, it just completely all worked out. Everything, you know, went right. And, you know, it takes a little bit of luck, but it takes a lot of skill to put yourself in that position. And he did. And so I think looking back, he's okay that he didn't get a job when he was NHL ready in 2010 or whenever that was. I mean, you know, I got to think that if he looks back now and sees how it would have played out and how it did play out, that he's completely okay with it.
Safe to say you guys stay in touch now that you're the affiliate of him. I imagine there had to have been a text or something around that time where you get hired and a week later he goes to the parent club.
Yeah, we still talk quite a bit, whether it's a phone call or a text. Or I actually go to several games every year on Long Island, so I'll always, you know, stop and say something to him in person or in training camp as well. I'm always there for a couple of weeks for training camp, and he's around too. So we still talk quite a bit. You know, he's been a very good friend and a great mentor for me for a long, long time. I don't know where I would be. I certainly wouldn't be here right now if I hadn't, you know, met him or interned for the Rivermen. You know, not to say he's gotten me jobs, but, you know, he's been the guy that has always, you know, steered me in the right direction. He's been the guy who's, you know, who I've leaned on every step of the way if I, you know, needed something or, you know, needed a critique or whatever it is of my work. But yeah, we stay in touch quite a bit. I do remember when we both got hired, that kind of week and a half span very well, because, you know, I remember he made a call for me. I called him, said, you know, hey, it worked out. I'm heading from, at the time, Greenville, South Carolina to Bridgeport, Connecticut. And, you know, he said, congratulations, all of that. And then, you know, a week later, it you know, came out that he got the Islanders job. So then it was me congratulating him back. And it's just funny how, you know, after all this time and after, you know, working together back in Peoria, that now we're still working hand in hand here in the Northeast, because every time a player gets called up from the Sound Tigers, and, you know, whether he's there for his NHL debut or if he's already been up there a couple of times, you know, Brenden always reaches out to ask how he's, you know, developed with the Sound Tigers, how he was playing with Bridgeport, and vice versa. You know, if I didn't catch an Islanders game the night before and a guy got sent down, I'll reach out to Brenden and say, hey, what'd you notice from him last night? So very good relationship, both personally and professionally.
It helps too to know a guy like that, just because when we go all the way back, like, so you're with Bridgeport now, but your first AHL broadcast came with the Rivermen during the AHL era, because Brenden was starting to get recognized, I believe, and he started getting some of those network opportunities, if I'm right, and that opened the door for you to fill in. Yeah,
so initially he gave me one period, and I begged him probably for, I don't know, a month. And I said, like, just let me have a period. Like, I want, you know, not even a full game, but I just want, you know, one frame of hockey to kind of see what I can do. And I remember after, again, trying to convince him for maybe even more than a month, he finally gave me a Peoria Rivermen Grand Rapids Griffins game in the second period of a game. It would have been 2011. Okay. And I loved it. You know, I'm sure I was terrible. I'm sure I prepared as much as I could. You know, I prepared like this was, you know, Game 7 of the Stanley Cup final. And I'm sure I was just brutal, but, you know, I had a lot of fun doing it. I thought at the time I did well. And so, you know, that's kind of what had me hooked and kept me coming back and pushing harder. And then what was it? Brenden, he took over for like a 3-game span for the St. Louis Blues. If I remember correctly, Chris Kerber, who's the radio play-by-play guy, had a personal issue. He had to step away for a couple of games. And so then Brenden got the call up for those 3 games. I'm trying to remember. I think 2 of them were on the road and 1 was at home. But anyway, that doesn't matter. So, but like 2 of them overlapped with the Rivermen games. And so while he, I think, went to Nashville or something for the first of those 3, one of those days lined up with a Rivermen Toronto Marlies game. And so, you know, he didn't have anybody as a backup or a fill-in guy. You know, it was him. You know, he didn't even have an analyst. He was doing everything himself, as most people at that level do. And I don't know if you have an analyst or not, but, you know, in Bridgeport, I'm still doing it solely me and, you know, no help. So He didn't have anybody to turn to. He said, Alan, here's the keys to the car. Good luck. And again, like I prepared as much as I could. At the time I thought I did well. Looking back, I'm sure it was probably just okay. And, but again, I really enjoyed it. And there was a second game, I think it was Peoria Rockford, that I also did. And, that was kind of my first stint of games. And I still have on my desk at work, I remember I think it was the game against Grand Rapids where I just did the second period for. He pulled out his wallet. He took out a $1 bill and he gave it to me. And he said, "You're not a professional broadcaster unless you get paid. Because if you do it for free, it doesn't make you a pro."
Yeah.
He goes, "I'm going to pay you for doing the second period. Now you're a professional." And I said, that's great. Like, I'm going to hold on to this. Like, can you sign it? And he got out a pen and he signed, "Congratulations on making your pro debut." Signed it, Brenden Burke, and he gave it to me. I still have it. I put it in a frame. It's on my desk at work right now. I've kept it all these years. And that's just one of those things where I really enjoy it because it takes me back to that time when I was an intern and I had so much fun with it. And again, it kind of takes me back to the Rivermen days. And at the same time, if I'm having a bad day in the office or if I just got off the air and it was a really bad broadcast and I'm really frustrated and everything, that's something that I look at and I say, okay, this is what keeps you moving forward and pushing forward. Brenden went from the American Hockey League to a great NHL play-by-play job. Why can't I do that? And that's just kind of one of the things I look at and say, all right, that's the carrot dangling out in front of the horse, and it just keeps you chasing after a dream that, I'm certainly not ready to give up yet.
I think we, and I can speak to the same way. I mean, never wanting to give up that dream. That's a really cool story. You never told me about that. There's just $1 somewhere on your office desk. I will tell you, in case you don't know this, and I don't know if you remember this, when you and Brenden each departed Peoria, at some point you guys left a note for Katie Pogaman to, I guess, basically sign on this little wall of fame that's in her office. And
she doesn't still have that, does she?
She does. Those notes are still there.
I knew she kept the Burke one.
No, you were valuable too.
Yeah, that's nice to hear. I'm glad she kept it and didn't put that in the trash.
Yeah, we'll have to find a way. I'll have to get her to take a picture sometime. I'm not in Peoria right now, but she'll have to get a picture and we can maybe put that in somewhere on the Zoom call or just some random note on social media one day that Alan was here. But that's no, it really is neat. And Alan, obviously you were a part of the team during, I don't know if neat would be the right word to use, but unique certainly would, in the times that were lying ahead. Brenden was there for 5 years in the AHL. And as you were interning there, I believe you were starting to hear rumblings, or at least there were some rumblings going around about the longevity of the team in the American Hockey League. Tell me, when did you first maybe hear about it? And not just talking from you as an intern and as somebody who, maybe, I mean, let's be honest, as broadcasters, we kind of know how this works. So Brenden Burke's getting these other opportunities. You might be in a spot where maybe right when I graduate, he gets the call up and then there's an opening here and boom, I could be in Peoria in the AHL. I've interned here for 3 years. They love me. And all of a sudden, not only just as an intern, but as a kid growing up, going to Carver Arena, that might not be a possibility anymore. The Blues are pulling out and there's not apparently going to be hockey in Peoria.
Yeah. It was really tough to hear. When I was an intern, I didn't hear many rumblings at all. There were always kind of rumors swirling, but you get that in any market with any team, certainly in the minor leagues. That's not really that different. But when I was an intern, that was never really like something that I looked at as far as, I shouldn't be looking with a future job here with the Rivermen because this team might not be around. By the time I graduate, I graduated Bradley in 2012, didn't have any job offers in May of 2012. And I wasn't really that stressed about it. I'm from Morton. I figured I'd go home and I'd, job search and something would come along. And it only took about a month. And in June of 2012, I got a job offer from Fox Sports in Charlotte, North Carolina to cover NASCAR. And growing up, I mean, hockey was big. My cousins played hockey. My uncle was a coach and a former player. But aside from that, I was also a really big and still am a really big racing guy. huge into NASCAR, huge into, IndyCar and really all types of motorsports. So, when I got this offer from Fox Sports to cover NASCAR, I was like, oh boy, here we go. Like, this is it. Like, this is my future. Like, hockey was fun and everything, but like, this is where I'm headed. And so, and the Rivermen was still around in that 2012-13 season. So, I went away for a year and lived in North Carolina, but I followed the team. I certainly kept in touch with Brenden. I would call him maybe once a month just to stay in touch. And then I ended up going back home for, was it like a 2-week period or something, just to go home and visit and to hang out. And while I was home was actually when it officially came down that the Blues were pulling Peoria, the Rivermen out of Peoria. And so I actually went to a game just to catch up with people and visit. And it was, I kid you not, it was the first game after they made this announcement, and everybody was completely rattled. And Katie can kind of, bring up the feeling that she had, kind of that sinking feeling of, oh man, like I got to go find a different job. Everybody was very, kind of shaken and depressed in a way. And it was tough. And I felt really awkward, saying hi to everybody there and trying to, make my rounds while everybody was just trying to figure out what just happened to their job and to the team. And, I knew Brenden wouldn't stay, once that team left, he was right on the doorstep of making the NHL. He was going to go to wherever he could to stay, at the AAA level of hockey. And so, once that all kind of got sorted out and the dust settled, then I started to look at it like, okay, well, if this, team leaves, well, which at the time it was announced that it did, then, for one, I can't go back because there's no job there. But if a team does come back, it's probably not going to be at the same level. It's going to be, at a single or a double A, ECHL level. So I said, all right, well, now I'll keep, my eyes on that. As much fun as I was having in Charlotte, I did kind of miss home a little bit. I figured if I could get a full-time job right there, still in sports, and again with the Rivermen, a team that I grew up attending games to, I would definitely consider that and probably take it. And so in 2013, that summer, I believe, when Bart and Bruce Sowers and a lot of folks announced that they were going to bring this team back in the SPHL, that's when I said, okay, now I have a decision. I can stay where I'm at now, or I could get into hockey full time. And, long story short, I called Bart up. I said, I'm very interested in this. And he said, okay, we're trying to figure a lot of different things out. The broadcasting side's not the first thing we're trying to figure out. So you got to be patient. And so I was, and, a few months later, he called and said, all right, we have this position now available. Would you like it? And I said, all right, well, deal.
Yeah.
I didn't really have to think too hard about it. And that's what brought me back. But I do remember that after I had already left and my internship was done, that those rumblings became a reality and the Blues made that announcement. And then, then it was just kind of waiting to see what would happen, and would there be a team at all, or, would it be an ECHL team? Would it be an SPHL team? What kind of level would it be at? And so I sat back like everybody else and waited to see what happened. And, thank you so much to Bart for doing what he did back then, and to Bruce Sowers and to everybody else, because, without them in that move, who knows where this franchise would currently be, if it would be around at all.
Yeah, a lot of people think they quite literally saved the Rivermen. And now you look at it at the time when they were leaving the AHL, they were celebrating 31 years of hockey in Peoria. We're coming up on the 40th anniversary of hockey in Peoria. You mentioned that you had reached out at the time. It was, a little ways down on the priorities. I think in May of 2013 was the official SPHL announcement. Fans weren't sure at the time either if it was going to be an ECHL team. And I think the SPHL was still relatively foreign on the radar of most people. So when they made the announcement in May, I assume that's around the time you reached out. Do you remember any of the hiring process? It sounds like the job was kind of yours to take or decline, but do you remember how close in proximity to the start of the season that was? How much were you behind the curtain and getting to kind of see what was all going into that first year and essentially a rebranding of the Rivermen into this single A hockey league?
Yeah, to be honest, Andrew, I didn't know a whole lot, and I really wasn't involved in a lot of the behind the scenes stuff. I didn't know, for instance, what they were planning on doing with, the jerseys and a new logo and even, silly things like, the mascot and all of that. I was kept pretty much out of it because I started so late. I think my first day was like late September.
Oh, wow.
Season starting in October. And, I wasn't really included in a lot of the conversations that were had prior to that. So, aside from Bart and I just talking about, what this role might look like and how many people might be in the office, what the staff might look like. I was kept out of a lot of this stuff just because, Bart had so many things going on, and him and Bruce trying to figure out what to do next. And, I can't imagine when you have so much to figure out in such little time, where you even start at. But, I knew that my side was the broadcasting role and media relations and all of that was going to be one of the last things they figured out. So when I started, it was just full blown, let's get into hockey season and, let's, get folks trying to be engaged with the team again. Let's get the social media stuff figured out. And let's keep Dave Aminian happy too.
Yeah, absolutely. No, Cleve.
Dave, I can't end this conversation without saying hi to Cleve. He's my man, but
yeah, Cleve is the guy.
Yeah. Again, long story short, I really didn't have a whole lot to do with, the whole rebrand and bringing the team back. I was just a very small part. Once September rolled around, that's when I joined the team.
So a couple more things there. On that note, one of the things you talked about was Bart said when he was kind of detailing you the position, he brought up how many people were going to be in the office, sort of what this role was going to encompass. You had been an intern there for so many years, so you had seen that front office. You had seen Brenden Burke's position. How different was it an AHL office to the SPHL office?
Just a lot fewer bodies. The communication side wasn't a whole lot different because Brenden was kind of a one-man show on that side. He was doing it all, and that's kind of what I did as well. I obviously handled the play-by-play, but the media relations, as much community stuff as I could, the social media side of it, all the stats and game notes for home games and distributing. What are they called now? They were called like puck presses. I don't know if that's still.
They are. Yes. I'm like trying to think in my head because it's been a while since I've had to print those out. But yep, every morning the puck press.
Yeah. So stuff like that. I did have to do some sales, mainly just corporate stuff over the summer. I don't think Brenden did that. That might have been the only other thing that I did. But a lot of it was just fewer bodies on the sales side and marketing side, and just trying to do as much as you could with a limited amount of staff, and especially because in the SPHL, you really don't have those larger front offices. And so, I don't know where you guys are at now with that, but that was kind of the main thing, was just, taking mainly other positions, a lot of other people's roles and kind of condensing them. Whereas the communications and broadcasting side was pretty much the same as when Brenden was there, again, other than maybe some sales in the summertime.
I mean, I can tell you right now, we're an office of 3 due to the pandemic, which is me, myself, Katie, and Bart. Alan, let's talk a little bit about something that is maybe a hot topic and something that you sort of walk the tightrope with. I want to know what your thoughts were on the fan reception. As you mentioned, and for anybody that doesn't know, the play-by-play side probably is our favorite part of the job, but it is often the least important part of the job. You have so many other hats to wear. One of them is social media, can be a very powerful tool. For you, I don't know how big Twitter was in 2013 as opposed to now, but Facebook obviously still very prevalent, or prevalent rather. And what was the fan response to going from AAA to single A? Because I feel that it's still a fight that the Rivermen deal with today. Bruce Sowers and Bart Rogers are largely accountable for, as I said, saving the Peoria Rivermen. SPHL or not, there was a chance there was going to be no Rivermen team in any professional hockey league, and they helped keep it alive, albeit at the single A level, which has been great. And the SPHL has grown to be a 10-team league with a lot of serious talent and players that can develop into players that can get into the affiliated ranks. But there is still that battle of anytime that you post, you're going to put an announcement out like Rivermen Day, you have fans saying, oh, the ECHL's back. We're getting back into affiliated hockey. What was the reception when you were there doing the social media and seeing the fans in person after going from AAA to single A?
Yeah, Andrew, I mean, right away, there was a lot of frustration. There was a lot of, oh, I'm not renewing my tickets. I'm never coming to a game again. But I think when you look at it, the product isn't as different maybe as a lot of people initially thought. I mean, it's a slower pace, but the action is there. There's a lot more fighting and a lot more physical activity in the SPHL product than the American Hockey League product currently. Fighting's getting taken out of the game, certainly at the NHL level and at the AHL level too. And I think it's always going to be part of, kind of the SPHL and even the ECHL level. But, right away, it seemed like, sorry, I'm losing my train of thought. My dog's barking in the background. It seemed like that was the one thing right off the bat that people didn't really grasp was, this is going to be a completely different product, and we're not going to enjoy it because it's going to be, really sloppy and turnovers all over the place and, bad goaltending. And I don't think it is that. I think there are very good players, as you mentioned, great goaltending, great development, especially when you look, from the beginning of a year to the end of a season. Players come a long way, and I don't think there's any difference really between the SPHL and the ECHL, to be honest with you. There is, again, the slight pace difference between that level in the AHL, but when you got a blue collar family and you're just trying to come out and find some fun entertainment on a Friday night, and you want to sit back and maybe want to have a few drinks, or you want to again just have fun with your kids and your family, the current Rivermen product is just as good as it's always been when you're looking to just go out and have a fun night out. And I think people realize that, and I think after maybe the first year or two, they said, all right, like I can get into this, and I'm going to support this team, regardless of what level it is. And, I think they've come a long way.
Yeah, and it's fun to have a winning hockey team, which the Rivermen have been for many years. They're still chasing that President's Cup in the SPHL. But, Jean-Guy Trudel, who was there when you were there, has built a super winning culture team. I want to let you go here soon because we have kept you for a while. The last question I do want to ask, and it's a question/statement and more so open-ended with your thoughts on it, is we talk about the SPHL and that transition, and you now an AHL broadcaster like Brenden when he was in the AHL in Peoria, in Utica, you've got one step to go. And while I'm sure for you, it's like if you don't get to that step, you don't feel a total level of satisfaction. But I think you're one of two kind of inspiring stories in the SPHL in that, when you look at this league's 16-year existence, to my knowledge, there's only two guys that are in the American Hockey League from that league, and nobody from the SPHL from a broadcast standpoint has gotten into the NHL. There's only one person in general that has gone from the SPHL eventually to the National Hockey League, and that's Scott Darling. But you and Lucas Favali, who's with Syracuse, you, of course, with Bridgeport, he was with the Mississippi River Kings, you with the Peoria Rivermen. Is there any kind of pride that you take in that? Because there's you talk about the fans that were not going to renew their season tickets. I think part of that has to do with a stigma that people are trying to label something and say, oh, well, it's this, and I think you, at least for the young college kids, you a Bradley kid, I was a Millersville grad in Pennsylvania. There's plenty of young broadcasters in this league. You're one of the guys that erases that stigma for anybody who thinks, well, I can't get out of here as a broadcaster. Do you take any pride in that? Do you and Lucas ever talk a little bit about that SPHL connection?
Yeah, 100%. I feel a lot of pride in that. And we do, I don't see Lucas a whole lot. I think last year we played 4 times. The year before that, we played twice. But that's, when we're catching up and going over notes pre-game, that's always something that comes up is it's not really a competition between us. It's more of just like hey, can you remember back, several years ago when we were just starting out and we were in the SPHL and, we had these big dreams and these goals that you're still working towards, but it's just really fun to see how far along you've come. And I feel, a lot of pride in, the minor leagues for players, for coaches, for broadcasters. It's all the same. It's all about development. And to see where I've come from my first game, in the SPHL with Peoria to now, leaps and bounds better. And again, like for players and coaches, it's the same thing. The SPHL has really proven itself and solidified itself as a very good kind of single A level of development and the number one pipeline to the ECHL, which is the number one pipeline to the AHL, and so on. There was a stigma, and I think going from the AHL to the SPHL, Rivermen, that stigma was very prominent, but I think that's kind of gone away because people realize that the SPHL, again, is a good product. It's a great place to start development, and that's not just the case for players. It's still it's a live game of hockey. It's still professional. It's still on the player side, kids who had decent college careers, might not have been D1, but D2, D3 that have made it to the pro game, and now they've got the same goals as everybody else trying to climb the ladder. So it would be a lot of fun. If it's not me, I hope it's Lucas, but at some point there's going to be somebody who breaks into the NHL who started in the SPHL, and that's just a fact. That's going to happen. It's not a matter of if, but when. And again, I hope it's me. If it's not me, I really hope it's Lucas. I hope it's both of us. But before I finish talking about this, I want to bring up, and I forget his name, and I really don't care about his name anyway, but my 1 year there in Fayetteville, North Carolina, we're on a road trip there. I think we only played the Fire Ants at the time.
Yep.
We only played them 4 times. We had 2 different bus trips to play 2-game sets. And I mean, that was a brutal road trip. That was like a 15, 16-hour bus ride. I think
that was our last one when COVID shut down. We drove down for nothing. Yeah,
the feeling. It's even worse to go all the way down there for nothing. I can't imagine doing that. But we did one of these road trips there, the 13-14 season, my 1 year there. And I think it was morning skate for us. And I was standing by the glass, just, kind of watching, just observing things. And the Fayetteville president walked over to me, the president of their team. And again, I don't remember his name. Again, I don't really care that I don't remember it, because he leaned over to me and said, what do you do with the Rivermen? And I said, I'm the play-by-play guy. And I was pretty proud of that. Mm-hmm. He said, all right, you're wanting to get to the NHL? And I said, yeah, that'd be awesome one day. Like, I don't know if it'll ever work out, but that's what I'm going to push for. He said, don't, just give up right now. It's too hard, at this level, hardly anybody makes it. No players seem to make it. No coaches make it. You're not going to make it. And the Michael Jordan thing from The Last Dance over the summer, the documentary where that one clip is like, oh yeah, and I took that personally. Yeah. Looking back, I took that personally. And again, that's why I don't really remember or care, what this gentleman's name was, but I remember he introduced himself as the president of Fayetteville. And he flat out said, don't try. You're not going to make it, go do something else with your life. And I was like, all right, well, that's, one challenge accepted. Yep. And I took that to heart. And if I wasn't already doing everything I could to advance to the next level, that, fueled the fire a little bit more. And, I'll never forget that. I remember that just like it was yesterday. I think about it all the time. And, if I am fortunate enough and I can make it to the NHL with a team or a network or something one day, that's one of the first things I'll, look back on and say, remember when I was, flat out told to give up because it'll never happen. I'll never be good enough and all of that. Nobody makes it out of this level. Well, there's someone who proves that it is possible.
You've got a preseason game under your belt, don't you, with the Islanders and Rangers?
Yeah, I did a couple, actually. We had at Webster Bank Arena in Bridgeport, we had really there for 3 years straight after I started, we had preseason games, but 2 in a row I did. It was the Islanders Rangers. It was one of their 7 preseason games, but they just came to Bridgeport to play it. I talked my bosses into letting me do that. So yeah, I mean, I do have those preseason games under my belt. No regular season games yet. So right now that's what I'm working towards, and hopefully a full-time position someday.
Yeah, well, hey, Alan, I think already you've made it pretty damn far from the SPHL, and there's only one step left to look up at. But right now you're killing it in the AHL. Really appreciate having you on here for Rivermen Day. It's awesome to hear from a guy from Peoria. And by the way, as you probably know, Peoria is known to have a lot of big broadcast names, actually, that have come through that city and gone on to bigger and better things. You've already done that, and I think you still have a little bit of room on that path to go. One more stop. But thanks so much for stopping by here and talking to us tonight, man.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Andrew. I appreciate it. And I'm going to make your face turn red real quick, too, because I think you're very good. I think, you're next in line to climb the ladder. Rivermen fans should be very, thankful and fortunate that they have you calling games, because I think you do a really good job. I still follow all the time, and unfortunately this year I can't, with the way things played out, but better believe in 2021, 22, I'll be following along here from Bridgeport. So thanks for everything you do for that team and that community. And thank you so much for having me on.
I appreciate it, Alan. Take care.
Absolutely. Thanks.